Hi, I'm Melissa Chandler, and welcome to After the Unthinkable, a podcast where I share what it's like to survive the things you think you can't survive and how to move forward one step at a time. So today's episode is part of my Fight for Change series, and I want to talk today about the people that the system forgets the most, not the victims. Not even the adult family members, but the children. The children in families of violent crime victims are, in my experience, the most overlooked people in the entire process. And I want to talk about why that is and what it costs and what has to change. When a violent crime happens, the world focuses understandably on the victims, and then to a lesser degree on the adult family members, the spouse or the parents or the grown siblings or the adult children. But there are almost always children, actual children, connected to that loss. Kids who lost a parent or a grandparent or an aunt, an uncle, a sibling. Kids who were close to the person who was gone. Kids who watched the adults around them fall apart and had no idea what was happening or why. And in the vast majority of cases, no one in the system ever asks about them. No one asks if there are children. No one offers them counseling. No one gives their parents resources to help explain something absolutely unexplainable. No one checks on how they're doing months or years later. They're just simply not counted. And that's why I call them the invisible victims, because that is exactly what they are. Present at the center of a tragedy and completely unseen by the people whose job it is to respond to it. So here is what being invisible does to a child in that situation. From my experience, from what I have seen, they absorb enormous trauma with very little help processing it. The adults around them are drowning in their own grief, and as much as we try, often can't fully show up. And it's through no fault of their own, no fault of the child's and no fault of the parents. And the system that swoops in around the case doesn't swoop in around the child. So the child is left to make sense of something that no child should ever have to make sense of, pretty much alone. And the thing is that children don't just bounce back from that. It shapes them. It can show up years later as anxiety, depression, trouble trusting people, difficulty sleeping. It can show up in 100 quiet ways that a person carries something they were never helped to carry. Probably most adults that I know have something, but this type of thing can change a child for their entire life if they don't have help getting through it. Because even though it's hard to recognize this, the tragedy didn't only happen to the people who died. It happened to every child in that family. And when we fail to see them, we let a single act of violence go on harming people for decades, just quietly in the background for decades. And I don't think that this happens because people are cruel or anybody in the system is deliberately trying to be, neglectful of the children. I think it happens because nobody's job description includes the children. The detective's job is the case. The prosecutor's job is the case. The advocate, when there is one, is usually focused on the adult navigating the process. But there's no box on any form that says there are children here and who is making sure they're okay. So the children fall through a gap that exists simply because no one was ever assigned to catch them. And that is fixable. That is a system design problem, and system design problems have solutions. So here's what needs to change. Every time a family is touched by violent crime, someone should be required to ask one simple question. Are there children in this family? And if the answer is yes, those children should be treated as victims too, because they are. That means a real referral to counseling, not a pamphlet. It means giving the surviving parents concrete resources and guidance for helping their kids through it. And it means someone following up more than once, because trauma in children does not always show up right away. Sometimes it surfaces months or years later. And by then, people have stopped paying attention. None of this requires a new law or a huge budget. It requires one question added to the process and one person made responsible for the answer. That is the entire fix. One question asked every single time, and someone whose job it is to make sure the children are not left to carry this alone. We count the victims, We count the cases. It is time we started counting the children. If you are one of those children, even if you are grown now, and no one ever asked about you, no one ever helped you, I want you to hear this. What happened to you was real. Your pain was real. You were never invisible. You were just surrounded by people who were not taught to see you. And it was never your fault that no one did. You matter. You always have. So thank you so much for listening to After the Unthinkable. I will be back soon with another episode. But until then, keep going. You are stronger than you think.